During October, a lot more companies do run breast cancer awareness events. They do a lot more screening, but then that's it. And it doesn't get talked about for another year. And if you think about how a lot of the breast cancers happen, a lot of them are caused by estrogenic cancers. So are caused by estrogen dominance. And estrogen is kind of your tissue growing hormone. Your body gives you lots of signs and symptoms that you may be estrogen dominant long before you find a lump in your breast.
Right.
In interrupted cycles in the first instance, so menstrual cycles, in polyps, fibroids, ovarian cysts, tissues that you grow in other parts of your body. These are all signs that perhaps your estrogen isn't doing exactly what it should.
Circling back to the fact that you were talking about breast cancer awareness month and the fact that, you know, we usually talk about it the most during that month. You have a very special campaign called Unthink Pink, I think is called. Can you tell us a bit more about that? I found that very fascinating, and I think that it's crucial for us to address women's health all year round and not just that one month and, you know, create that hype and then just forget about it for the rest of the year.
Well, exactly. And in fact, you've effectively summarized actually the overarching message of Unthink the Pink, which is that women's health is a bigger topic than a single month or a single day. It deserves to be spoken about all year round. Why this is important is because take breast cancer, for example. October as Breast Cancer Awareness Month has become such a thing that often women will not go for a breast exam outside of October.
Yes.
And if you ask them, did you go for a breast exam this year? They say, oh, I missed it in October. I'll just go next year instead.
Yeah.
You know, which is counterproductive. Yeah. Yes, during October, a lot more companies do run breast cancer awareness events. They do a lot more screening, but then that's it. And it doesn't get talked about for another year. And if you think about how a lot of the breast cancers happen, a lot of them are caused by estrogenic cancers, so are caused by estrogen dominance. And estrogen is kind of your tissue growing hormone. Your body gives you lots of signs and symptoms that you may be estrogen dominant long before you find a lump in your breast.
Right.
In interrupted cycles in the first instance, so menstrual cycles, in polyps, fibroids, ovarian cysts, tissues that you grow in other parts of your body. These are all signs that perhaps your estrogen isn't doing exactly what it should.
Right.
And if these things are happening, you should probably be thinking about breast cancer screening and self-exams and just really understanding what's going on in your body and trying to address the estrogen dominance also a lot earlier than maybe 40.
Right.
If you have a family history of cancer, you should be thinking about breast cancer earlier than 40.
Right.
And the screens and things that you have to do, again, quite apart from the fact that they shouldn't be limited to one time in a year, should be more extensive than a breast exam.
Right.
Because we are one body, we are a whole person, and the hormones, the chemical messengers that allow our bodies to function are incredibly complex and intertwined, and it's important to understand what your kind of health baseline looks like.
Right.
Not just in the context of potentially getting breast cancer.
Yes.
So we are running a very active campaign now for the next 12 months with a different kind of campaign partner every month, trying to get conversations about women's health into places where they perhaps aren't so much.
Yes.
So this coming month, we're going into labour camps. We're setting up pop-up clinics that don't just do medical checkups, but also run with a partner who will be announced soon, but do fitness classes and distribute fresh fruit and vegetables. So it's taking this like holistic, whole person approach.
Yeah.
In December, we're partnering with the university to bring the topic of women's health to medical students and to the sort of student body around the UAE. In January, we have another partner. We're going out to farms and to more rural parts of the UAE to talk about women's health and why women's health is important, again, with this very kind of holistic and personalized approach. So we're trying in a very active way over the next 12 months to ensure that women's health is a conversation that is had
Yes.
all year round and also everywhere by everybody. If people aren't saying, oh my goodness, not NABDA health, I am sick of hearing that name, I am sick of talking about women's health, by the end of next year we will not have done our jobs.
Yeah, you will not have achieved your goal.
We will not have achieved our goal.
You know, it's just, I think the key takeaway from what you just said is understanding your body. Like, as a woman, I feel like that's something that I lack, and I lacked from a very early stage. I mean, from the moment I hit puberty, there were so many things that were unanswered, and I think we spoke about this before the show as well. There's so many taboos, and there are so many like unspoken of, you know, aspects of a woman's health and a woman's body. And I think growing up in an Arab household, my mom, I mean, bless her, it was just an awkward conversation. She was never used to that, and I can't blame her for that. And I feel like that's a lot of what I'm going through right now. A lot of unexplained aspects of my body and my health that I just want to know more about. And I appreciate what you're doing. And I think that just goes into my next question is, from the moment a girl hits puberty, there are so many changes and so many things that we don't know about. I mean, I remember going through it all. And until today, there are so many things in my head that I feel like are still unexplained. Like, why did I experience that on that certain day? And that's what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the different phases and the different challenges that women go through from that moment they hit puberty up until menopause. I mean, we don't have to go into details because that's a lot, but I mean, if we can just touch on that, because I feel like a lot of girls are also afraid to come forward and ask questions in fear of like getting an answer that they might not want to hear. Or
yeah, so I think, I mean, even puberty and hitting puberty is kind of a funny concept because there are actually 5 stages to puberty. And
well, there you go.
Yeah, exactly. So what we think of as puberty is when your period starts, essentially, which is actually stage 4.
Mm-hmm.
So there are 3 other whole stages that happen.
Well, see, I thought that was the first stage.
No.
There you
Almost,
go.
in fact, the last stage.
Okay.
So understanding that, and understanding, you know, educating parents as well about the conversations they can be having with their boys and girls about the stages of puberty and what's happening and what's appropriate to talk about and what's palatable for the children also to be spoken about at different stages.
Right.
I think there's a lot of destigmatization to do around menstrual periods because you know, they're in many ways things to be celebrated.
Yes.
The menstrual cycle is like it's often referred to as the 5th vital sign these days because it gives you a window into what's happening in your body. Often, I mean, there's a very good reason doctors ask you what's the date of your last period. It's like the first question often that you'll get asked. It's because if you have something like insulin resistance, probably the first place you'll see that is in your cycle.
Oh.
It'll become irregular.
Oh, interesting.
If you have something like polyps or you have any other kind of gynecological issue, you'll see it in your cycle first. You might start to experience bleeding between periods. If you understand what your moods and your sort of strengths do over the course of your cycle, you'll be able to see when something is changing physically that's affecting those. There are better exercises to do at different points in your cycle because of the different hormone balances in your body at that different point.
Right.
There's an argument that says, you know, we should be thinking about how to rebuild workplaces so that they really play to the strengths of women, because women have a lot more energy at certain points in their cycle. Should we be flexing up and down the length of work days so that when you are in a particularly energetic phase of your cycle, you work 14 hours and then when you're going into your period, you work 4? Question mark.
Yeah.
There are lots of, you know, things that you can think about, but understanding what is happening with this 5th vital sign is really crucial and really interesting. Also, women should be interested in it. Women and men should be interested in it. There's also an argument that says, you know, we should be educating boys and girls about puberty in the opposite sex from early on, so that how the human body works and how fertility works, not overlaying things around relationships, which is where stuff can get a bit emotional and messy, but just how the human body works anatomically would mean that the first time a couple discusses fertility isn't on their wedding night, when suddenly you go from it not being something that is discussed to having to produce a baby in 9 months.
Right.
You know, if people understood how their fertility worked, how their bodies worked, and also how that was the relevant aspects for the other sex, then it would make all of the conversations that will inevitably happen later on in life much easier.
Oh, of course. Yes, precisely. And then how would you, like, I would say for people who are experiencing, you know, symptoms either during menopause or I want to say before, I mean, how would you explain that? How would you help someone ease into that? Because I feel like a lot of women go through a very tough time when they start to experience those symptoms and going into it. Yeah, psychologically and physically, I guess.
Yeah, so menopause is another interesting one. I mean, I think actually with most women, the symptoms creep up and then they kind of gather to a peak.
Okay.
And a lot of women will acknowledge that or think, gosh, could I be perimenopausal, when they have so many different symptoms hitting them in parallel that they can no longer ignore them. But actually, you might start to experience, firstly, there's a misconception about when perimenopause starts. A lot of women will enter perimenopause in their late 30s. It's not something that happens in your late 40s or 50s, and it can last 10 to 12 years.
Okay.
So it can be something that you go through from your late 30s right into your early 50s, and you might hit menopause, which is just 1 year exactly after your last ever menstrual cycle.
Right.
In your early 50s, and then symptoms can continue beyond menopause into postmenopause.
Oh, wow. Yeah, see, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's another thing that we never speak about.
It's another thing that we never speak about. And so I think, again, it's a period of transition. The reason why our logo is 5 petals is because each petal is meant to represent a hormonal stage in a woman's life. So you have childhood, then you have puberty, which is a kind of ramp up of hormonal activity. Then you have normal adulthood, which is a stable 20, 30 years where you are ovulating 1 or 2 eggs every cycle in an ideal world.
Right.
And you are reabsorbing about 1,000. Then you have perimenopause, which in some ways is a little bit of a mirror image of puberty. You have a gradual ramp down in hormonal activity, although with the prevalence of chronic diseases today, it's more like a roller coaster kind of ramp down.
Yeah.
And then you have postmenopause, or what we like to refer to as the second childhood, and the moment where a lot of women feel like they are truly free for the first time in their lives. So understanding that these are each phases of the same, I guess in our case, kind of flower or life. They are periods that you move through. Your body changes and evolves with each one. They make sense together, and you can make sense of them together as well. Is a really important thing. Again, perimenopause is a funny one because of the 35 plus symptoms, if you saw those symptoms, same symptoms in a man, they could be a sign of a really serious life-threatening condition.
Wow.
A thyroid malfunction, cancer. Like a lot of the things that women actually live with and experience as normal are things that would be a sign that something has gone seriously wrong in a man. So supporting women and understanding really how things might feel, what they might feel like. For example, I'm breastfeeding my daughter at the moment, which means that my prolactin levels are high and my estrogen levels are low, which means that I get hot flushes sometimes, a little bit like someone going through perimenopause. And we live in a very hot country.
Yes.
So a lot of the time you could just feel like, oh, why isn't the AC working?
Of course.
And you don't realize the extent to which that moment of feeling hot affects you. But it affects you.
Yes.
You know, your energy levels drop a little bit, and obviously the hot flushes I get are not anywhere near the hot flushes that you women would experience going through perimenopause, but they're there, and I'm very aware of them.
Yes.
But, you know, enabling women to understand and to be thinking, like, is this thing that I'm experiencing happening a lot?
Mm-hmm.
Is it happening every day? Just getting them a little bit more conscious again about what their baseline looks like from a health perspective. And so what abnormal also looks like for them from a health perspective is really important.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it just goes back to knowing your body, paying attention to whatever you're going through and getting the answers. I feel like a lot of women would feel the difference if they got all the necessary answers and if they asked questions a bit more openly. And I think...
And if they were heard.
And if they were heard.
And if
Precisely.
They were heard. We did a survey of about 500 women. And the last question we asked was, if you could change one thing about the healthcare you receive today, what would it be? And it was, I wish my doctor would listen to me. I feel like my doctor doesn't listen to me. I go in and I say how I'm feeling, and my doctor dismisses it.
Yes.
I'm being emotional. I'm being a drama queen.
Right.
I'm flagging things that aren't relevant. It's just normal. Get on with it. I feel like I don't have a voice. I don't have a voice.
Oh my goodness. You honestly like touched on the right point, because we had a psychologist on the show who spoke about postpartum, and that is one of the main issues that women deal with postpartum, is that they are told, oh, you'll be fine, or it's okay, just pick yourself up. I mean, if she could pick herself up, she would have done it. Trust me. Like, it doesn't
we're
take
very good at that.
Exactly. Exactly. And even if she could pick herself up, there are still underlying, challenges that she's going through and that she has no explanation for. And she doesn't need you to tell her that, oh, just get over it, or you're being dramatic. Like, if she's laying in bed for hours and she can't get herself up, there is something there. That's a red flag. So just listen to her. And it's not just the doctors. I was going to add, it's the partners as well. I feel like a lot of women have complained about not being heard by their family members, their partners, or their doctors. And I think that's something that we're lacking, and I think that's...
it's something we have to change.
Yes,
for sure.
Absolutely.
I think one of the things that really isn't picked up on is, so we did a survey of 400 women in the UAE with one of our partners, Rise Birth Center, and the prevalence of postpartum depression, so this isn't baby blues, it's...
Yes.
PPD was 56% in women and 30% in men.
Wow.
So what you don't realize is that often you might have a partner who in their head is thinking, I want to support my wife with her baby, but is also incapable of doing so.
Of course.
So you really need support that, again, and I think you see the gaps immediately postpartum as well. The mother's first and only priority is her baby.
Right.
She will think of herself in every instance last.
Oh,
you
yes.
have to forcibly get her to do stuff like shower and change her clothes and have a decent meal and make time for herself and. So if you want to do one thing for a family postpartum, take care of the mother. Because if you take care of the mother, she will take care of her baby.
Yes, absolutely.
And this is something that partners forget, that healthcare providers also forget. Even if you give birth in a really excellent, midwifery-led facility here, the instant that baby is out, the mother is forgotten about.
Yes.
When I gave birth to my last baby, I was desperate to get some sleep. She just wouldn't settle. She was waking every 30 minutes, every 60 minutes. And I was like, I just need to sleep for 45 minutes uninterrupted, knowing that the baby's okay. They wouldn't come and take her. There was no one to watch her. We can't leave her in reception. Like, nobody would come and just wheel her around a corridor for 45 minutes so that I can sleep.
Right.
They refused. And this was in one of the most supposedly like mum and baby friendly hospitals. And it's because they're worried about breastfeeding. They say the baby's got to be there and available to breastfeed. It's like, the baby's fed. The baby's done nothing but feed.
Yes.
Please, like, you got to listen to me as the mother and hear what I need.
Yes.
And then you can advise me on what needs to be done for my baby. But yes, in a lot of things, in a lot of places, in a lot of countries, in a lot of instances, and a lot of times, mothers are just
forgotten
not
about.
heard and forgotten about.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you did mention something that I also wanted to add, is that oftentimes, you know, men are also forgotten when it comes to care and attention, because on the flip side, sometimes the men feel like, oh, I shouldn't be complaining. She's been through so much, and I don't want to be unfair because I mentioned that, you know, sometimes the men forget about the mothers, but it's also, I mean, the same applies. Exactly.
I mean, arguably, we're forgetting about fathers by not having shared parental leave.
Exactly.
You know, how can we expect mothers to share caregiving obligations? And how can we relieve mothers of some of those caregiving obligations if men only get a couple of weeks
if they're lucky
leave?
If they're
lucky.
Some get days.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who do you give the baby to?
Exactly. Absolutely.
How do you also, you know, in those very critical early days, really establish as a couple what your routine looks like? You know, how do you learn together about how to look after a new baby and then a toddler and then a child?
Yes.
You know, if only one parent is forever present, it can't happen. It physically can't happen.
It's just,
so yeah, it's important. Again, in the same way we spoke about fertility, and understanding that sometimes to relieve the burden on women, the stuff you do has nothing to do with women and everything to do with men.
Yes.
With fertility, it's understanding that you need to test and check men in the same breath that you test and check women.
Yeah, absolutely.
With parenting, it's giving men the freedom to parent responsibly, as women are also free to parent responsibly. It's always a two-way conversation. There are always two sides to the coin.
Sophie, we're going to have you back. But before we let you go, I just want to ask one last question. If you were sitting in a room right now filled with women of all ages, what would your advice be? Just one takeaway, one golden advice.
Oh, that's a good one. And it's actually on your wall.
Yeah.
Is ask why. Like, the one thing that I think people stop doing, and we do it as children very naturally, is asking why. And we accept the things that people tell us as gospel, and that extends to the things that we accept about our body. You know, a lot of women get told, oh, you know, bleeding is a normal side effect of, for example, hormonal contraception. It's normal. Don't worry about it. They stop asking about it. Gynecological cancers get detected late. You know, women are lying in bed. They can't get out of bed. They're told it's normal. They stop asking why. They don't deal with issue. I think my one piece of advice to all women, regardless of age, is never stop asking why. I love it. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much for, you know, sharing your time with us. I know you have such a busy schedule, and we were just talking about it before the show, but we really appreciate it, and we want to have you back. So whenever you have the opportunity, please come back and answer some of the whys that we may get. It would be my pleasure. Thank you so much. And if anyone has any questions, please send them through to podcast@gulfnews.com. If we do get a bunch of questions, we will definitely have you back for a Q&A. Okay. Thank you. Sounds good.